All right, welcome back to the Wise Practice Podcast. I am Laura Long, taking over for Whitney Owens, who has so graciously agreed to join me today because I wanted to have a conversation that I wish I could have listened to earlier in my career. Now, we're not talking step-by-step process or anything like that, but I do want to talk honestly with Whitney about what it actually looks like to build income streams beyond the therapy room. So, as you all know, Whitney is our fearless leader here at Wise Practice. Do you have anything that you want to say further, Whitney, to introduce yourself? I mean, you pretty much don't need an introduction to your own podcast.
That's funny. No, I'm just enjoying this. It's fun to be on the other side on your own show and to have the amazing Laura Long giving me my interview. I'm really happy to have that as well.
It's very much a full circle moment, isn't it?
Mhm.
That I'm the one interviewing you. And so, if you're listening to this, you probably have been thinking about doing something more than your private practice, but you're not quite sure where to start, what that means. And odds are, it's not that you don't have an idea, you probably just have too many ideas.
Yes.
So, Whitney, I wanted to ask you some questions, and this will just kind of be like a back and forth because you and I both have our own different journeys
Yeah.
into not just private practice, but starting multiple income streams. So, I want to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the things that we wish we would have known before diving headfirst into these different forays of alternate income streams. And hopefully, by the end of our conversation together, people will feel really clear on whether or not this is something that they might want to pursue.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So my first question for you, Whitney, it's like, a ask me anything episode. I love this. When did you first realize that you wanted to build something beyond your private practice?
Good question. I think it was 2018 or 19. I was in a mastermind group and I was starting a group practice. And during the group, I wasn't really getting a lot of direction faith-wise. I was getting a
Mm,
lot of instruction on the business side.
yeah,
But
the tactical.
yeah, and I'm in this group, about 6 other people, and I'm like, faith is why I do it. That is gonna impact my hiring, it's gonna impact my values, it's gonna impact my website, my branding, all the things. And not that I was being told that I couldn't talk about that, but it was very uncomfortable to talk about that in this group. I
Mm,
also didn't sense that the person leading the group really knew much about that or felt had an alignment in that.
yeah.
I was like, am I really going to try to get advice from someone who isn't really understanding this about me? Right? Because that's an important component of why we're called. Exactly what we're talking about, called to more. Like I felt
Hmm.
called to more and I needed someone to lead me in that. And I didn't have anybody. And so I went on a retreat. I'm going to go a little bit past your question
I
here.
want to know, we want to know all of it.
Okay. So I'm thinking through all this and I'm like, maybe I should do some consulting for practice owners that have a faith-based perspective. I remember thinking someone needs to do this. I actually didn't want to do it. I wanted somebody else to do it. I
You're like, I
actually,
wish someone would just take this from me so I don't have to be the one to do it.
oh yeah, because I was not in a place in my life to be doing that. I actually
You
went, go ahead.
you sound like Moses right now because I remember reading all this scripture in Exodus where Moses is like, "Dang it, God! Like I do not want to do this. Why? I am not the person for this job." That's who you sound like.
That is exactly what I was thinking. At that time in my life, I had a very newly diagnosed autistic daughter. She was 2. She had a hearing loss. I mean, it was like you couldn't sleep at night. It was terrible. And then I had my other daughter who was like 6. My husband's a full-time pastor. I'm running a group practice. Like, who has any capacity or energy to take on starting another business, right? So at the time, I was like, ooh, and I remember going to Gordon Brewer actually. And I was like, oh, he'd be really good at this, that he's a minister, and a consultant. And he was like, nope, I already got my own thing going on. I was like, dang it, who's going to do this? And so I'm on this retreat. I'm walking by the Lake Michigan up on a mountain, and I look over the water and I'm just like, wow, like this is big. This is
Mhm.
big. And I felt the Lord like impress on my heart. Uh, you're called to this. Like you need to do this. And I was reminded of the story of Mary and Martha, where Martha is all in the busyness. She's doing
Yeah.
all the things.
She's cleaning up, she's getting ready.
That's right. And Mary has selected the best thing. And it was like an analogy to me that I was so focused on my group practice and the details and the doing that I wasn't seeing the bigger thing, the more important thing, which was doing faith-based consulting for practice owners. And that is where I have grown so close in my relationship with God. So, in the same way that Mary sat at the feet of Jesus, I feel like I get to experience that leading wise practice. Oof.
Wow.
I'm a little emotional today.
What? No. I mean, how can you not be emotional recounting that story and how the Holy Spirit essentially came upon you that fateful day in Lake Michigan where you were just looking out onto the mountain and being told, being impressed upon, this is for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it was a journey to get there because,
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that.
yeah, I still continued to try not to do it.
I love how you're actively trying not to do the thing that is continuing to grow and impacting the lives of hundreds, even thousands of therapists across the world. So for you, and I think for many others who dabble in alternative income streams, it wasn't really about leaving therapy at all. It was simply about expanding your impact. That's what I'm hearing.
I love how you said that. Yeah, it
Hmm.
truly, as I even look at it now, wise practice and Water's Edge, they complement and feed each other. They both make both better. So if I hadn't done wise practice, Water's Edge probably wouldn't be as great as it is now because of the way it helps it. Yeah.
Right. And I also love how you pointed out that the mastermind group you were a part of didn't understand, didn't align with how important your faith is to you because you're right, it touches everything. Every decision you make as a leader, as an entrepreneur is rooted in and grounded in your faith. And so if you're going to be a part of a business building group that doesn't take that into account, you might run the risk of building something that actually isn't aligned with your faith and doesn't feed the bigger mission,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you knew to step back and say, wait a minute, just because this doesn't fit the narrative of this mastermind doesn't mean that I give up on it. So what did you do next?
Which part of the story am I going to tell? Um, so next, I was like, huh, is there really people that want Christian-based consulting for their private practice? Are these people out there, or is it just me? So I had an SEO expert with me at the time. And so I just happened to have one right beside me. And we
Who
sat,
happens to be one of your best friends?
yeah. And so we sat, well, and we became friends shortly after this. But she sat down and she did a search. She was like, over 700 people every month specifically search for that. And I was like, oh, now remember, this was back before the world of AI, the way we know it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, that's a lot of people. Wow. So then I went to I was on the retreat with my consultant at the time. And I went to my consultant and I said, I'm going to do this. There's
Mm-hmm.
a need. I feel a call. Are you going to help me do it? Help me build this business? Because I knew I had to build the business. And then he was like, oh, well, why don't you just join my business and do faith-based consulting? And at the time, I was like, that's like a dream come true. I get to do what I want to do, and I don't have to start my own business. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to do my marketing, get an email list, get followers, all the things, which maybe we'll talk about in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, great. And he's going to help me do it under his platform. This all seemed like perfect alignment. So I went down that road and I went down that road for 3 years, two and a half, three
Mm-hmm.
years, and it was good for a while.
Yeah.
And then it became very clear that his agenda, values, alignment, business model was just not lining up with the faith-based desire that I had. And so that was at that point that I had to make a really hard decision to leave that position, which
Yeah.
meant leaving the email list I'd grown, the podcast I'd created, the groups I was leading, and I walked away because I was like, I've got to make something that is more aligned with what I know to be true about me and what
Yeah.
I want to do. So then I started all over.
Talk about a pivot. I mean, your intention didn't pivot, but you essentially had to just burn the house down and rebuild in a new place.
That's right. And that was, when we were in Nashville and I was at that conference and you were speaking and I was
Mhm.
sitting there and I was like, I've got to do this. I've got to start this business. Because when I left that other business, I was so just broken. I was like, I can't, I'm tired,
Hmm.
I don't want to do it. And God was like, no, get up and get this done. And that actually is kind of what you said. And I pulled up my computer and I purchased the LLC while you were speaking, and Last Practice was born.
I was speaking on impulse momentum.
Okay.
Yeah, and imperfect action and just taking the next step, even if you don't
Yes.
know what the one is after that and after that and after that. And even if you don't have all the answers, you'll never have all the answers to just do the thing. And so you
Yep.
did. You opened up your laptop and you did the thing right then and there, which is
Yeah.
another reason why this conversation is so full circle.
It's so cool. Yeah. And I do have to just point out that hotel in Nashville is where we're going to have the summit. Maybe in that exact same room. I'm not 100% sure, but that's just it's really special to me to be able to go back to that place
I
where
want you to sit in that same seat if they have the tables arranged the same way and just sit there and speak to 2019 Whitney.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Which I guess is a perfect segue into my next question. What is something that you wish you had understood before starting Wise Practice Consulting?
I wish I had believed in myself more. I don't think that I made a wrong decision necessarily by joining this other group. And it got me growing in my confidence, my ability, meeting people. But I also could have just started it right then.
Yeah. And
And
maybe you were
so,
scared.
oh, I was so scared. And so thinking about the 2 to 3 years that I worked under somebody else, though I learned a lot, and I'm grateful for all that was for me. As I said it to you and I was reflecting, because I've actually never reflected on this before until we just said it right now. I
Hmm.
just told you about all the reasons why that leader wasn't in alignment, but then I still moved forward with it, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think I took the easy way out. Easy way is not always bad, but I wish I had just said to myself, you know what, Whitney, you don't need somebody else. You
Yeah.
can do this on your own. And I wish I had just, I mean, I need other people like consultants, but I didn't need another
Hmm.
business to do it under.
Yeah. So you wish that you had trusted in your own capabilities and, the Lord's guidance was going to be there with you the whole time.
Yeah.
You still learned a lot. So that's something important to consider too. And I want your listeners to hear that if you're in a season of life where you're contemplating adding a different income stream or pivoting your business, no matter what you do, you can always change it again.
Yeah.
You weren't locked in that you had started doing faith-based consulting under someone else's umbrella and then you just couldn't do it. It just it took a lot more effort that you had to start over. You
Mm-hmm.
were still able to continue though, and you could have pivoted at any point. So I almost want to give people that permission slip as well,
Yeah.
that you can start anywhere. And who knows, maybe 6 months down the road or 18 months, or in your case, 3 years, you realize that it's not working the way that you had hoped. You can always change it. You're
Yep.
in charge here. You're not married to it.
Yeah. God has a reason. Like every season, God can give something to us.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it's important to say I sort of lost 2.5 years of building wise practice. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of us don't want to move forward because we think we're not capable. I don't have all the things I need. And then when you wait, you've lost that time. And
Yeah.
time is so important.
I'm glad you said that because that's actually my answer to what is something I wish I had understood before starting is that the time it takes to to do anything when it comes to a different income stream, it takes so much more time and effort and energy than we might realize
Yeah.
going into it. Like even building an email list. I was talking to a consulting client just the other day and she has 17 subscribers on her email list, which is not nothing because it's not her mom. These are actual people who want to hear from her and are getting value. I mean, she's new to the whole thing. And she was just given an opportunity that might really exponentially grow that email list. And what I told her is your first 1,000 are the hardest. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah.
The first 1,000 are the hardest. After that, it gets a little easier because people start talking about the value that you're providing and
Mm.
the results that they're seeing from whether it's your emails, your blog posts, your videos, your podcast, anything that you're putting out there to solve a problem. People start to talk, they start to share.
Yeah. You know what I have noticed lately it is really hard, and I don't think people understand this part, to get people to listen to you. You can have so much value, but knowing the right way to communicate that to people in a way that is engaging with the world the way it is, there's just so much out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the email
And
list is so important. I think people put too much value on all the other things, but yeah,
yeah, I think your email list is one of your most important assets. If you have an online business anyway, if
certainly.
you're selling informational products, it can
Yeah.
just be difficult. So that's something that I wish I had understood. It wouldn't have changed what I did. I think it just would have helped me set realistic expectations if I had known that this might take longer than just a few months to grow an email list to 10,000 people.
Yeah. Speaking of growing an email list, we do have a handout on this episode in the show notes. The call to more with additional streams of income. If you want to go grab that, it'll put you on the email list for wise practice.
Yep. And you're
Uh,
going to get all kinds of goodies and valuable input from Whitney on a regular basis, which you are great about sending not just like regular communication, but really helpful nuggets. I find myself reading every single one of your emails and taking away something. So
Oh,
I love that about your email list is you're not like selling something every single week and just being like, here, buy this thing, buy this thing. That's not it at all. You're there to actually help people and really help them to get to the next level, whatever that is for their businesses, whether they're starting a solo practice or going from solo to group or doing something like what we're talking about today, where you're building different streams of income. You're really just coming from this place of service and you really do have a servant's heart, which is why I think that this business is perfect for you.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I certainly think when you're doing an additional stream of income as it grows, it's, and I guess in any business, what are the things that are the most important for you to be a part of and which ones are less? And so all my social media posts, it's usually somebody else posting all that for me, right? But my
Mm-hmm.
emails, these are my people, right? So I do sit down and write each one personally and consider the faith-based practice owner that's reading this email. So I'm glad that's communicated.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next question. What is something that surprised you about your income stream once you got into it? So for you, it was the faith-based consulting. What surprised you?
Oh, that's funny. The first thing that came to mind, that I'm really good at it.
You're, as much as you pushed it away and tried to not do it, it actually turns out that you're good at it.
Yeah, I kept thinking I can't. I mean, when I talk about the capability part, I think a lot of that was like, am I capable of building another business? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's capable. And then I started doing it and I was like, I'm really good at it and I love it. That experience of fullness of joy that you can have in your heart when you do something when you love. Like I remember the first client I ever saw in my private practice, even though like the heat didn't work and I was like, what the heck am I doing? I drove home. I remember driving back to my house over the bridge and being like, I love the work I do. This is
Yeah.
it. This is what I was made for. And I'll tell you, Laura, I still feel that way when we do a wise practice meeting, like the community
Mm-hmm.
meetings. I still am like, I love this. I'm
When I
amazed by it.
when I see you at these summits, because I've been to two of them now. I think you've had maybe, have you had four?
Something like that.
Something like that, three or four. Every time I see you at one of these Wise Practice summits, I just see you lighting up the whole weekend. So it's no surprise why at the end of it all you have this like dip in emotion, right? It's heavy because the whole weekend you're just like on cloud nine. And I can tell that you're doing exactly what God put on your heart to do that day on Lake Michigan.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that, and I don't know if, and you can speak to if you feel like this. I feel like wise practice is this like dear, intense love that I feel, but also one of the hardest things I've ever done.
So you mean
Can you?
it's not passive income? It's not just
What? I
you don't
there
just set it and forget it and you just make $100,000 a month?
good. That would be very nice. I do think there are some more things I could do to make that happen that I haven't done yet, but yeah. Does that relate to you when you started doing additional streams of income where you like loved the thing, but it was so hard?
Oh, absolutely. And the reason you love it is why you keep pushing through despite
Mhm.
how hard it is. I don't think there's an easy one.
Yeah,
Pick your hard.
yeah, and I do think people think that. They think, oh, passive stream. I mean, even the word, it just makes it, oh yeah, lackadaisical. I'm just gonna do
Hmm.
this thing and put it out there. I'm gonna make all this money. And oh my gosh, it's so freaking hard to sell something. I had
Well,
a lit book. And I was like,
yeah.
surely I got this email list. People love me. It's on the, how many books am I gonna sell? I can't remember exactly. I think I sold 37.
Well, it's still more than zero,
Still
you
more than
know?
zero.
I do think that and I said this in a previous episode where I did another takeover. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's the one before or after this one even, but I talk about, the online messaging about passive income leads people to believe that. So it's not their fault, if they're listening to this podcast and they were thinking that it was going to be whatever their idea is just going to be this passive thing. You just put together a workbook or a couple of videos and then you can monetize it. I think part of the reason that belief exists is because there are people selling that idea.
That's what I was gonna say. Yep. Sell the,
Um,
yeah.
Another thing that I think surprised me when it came to online entrepreneurship is there was a bit of an identity shift for me because I went from being a therapist to now I'm a coach or a consultant. And in that, I also became this like online entrepreneur and I'm like a builder, a creator. It was just like all these different hats I felt like I had never worn before because you're right, the skill sets required to build an online presence are a bit different. Building an online email list is different than just trying to get more clients in your practice.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
so
glad
there's
you
a bit of
pointed
an
that out.
identity shift.
Mm-hmm. I'm realizing this things came a lot more naturally to me than I thought they would.
Hmm.
I would say the identity issue that I have had is, this is going to sound a little arrogant. I don't mean it that way. Is the whole micro celebrity thing. That was what my husband told me. He's like, Whitney, you're a micro celeb. I'm like, oh my gosh. So especially if I see people like grad school people, people I knew
Hmm.
before I started doing consulting, I just feel all this like discomfort of my
Hmm.
success.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, at the conference I went to a few years ago, I go to the state LPC conference every year, and we sponsor it as Wise Practice. And the a therapist that I had had before, she literally came up to the table, which I'm kind of like, should she have done that? She comes up to the table. She goes, "Do you remember me?" And I was like,
Ooh,
"Hello." And
that's
she's,
a little ick.
I know, in
Sorry.
front of my coworkers, right? And she's like, "I am just so proud of you." Like it was just this discomfort of my success and her influence, and it was like,
Hmm.
what is going on here? But I had multiple people at that conference come up to me and make me feel that way, and so I've had to have a real identity shift that it's, instead of that pulling back, like that's people's way of being close and trying to understand you, and just embrace it and be with people instead of pulling back, which is what I still do sometimes. But
Hmm. Yeah, that was a little strange for me. I actually have a poster in my office. You can't see it because it's on this wall over here, but it says, "You don't know me, but I'm famous." Because that's how it felt when I was a consultant myself, where, in very specific circles, I was well known and, to the world, no one knew who I was. But it was a little strange. And what I think that discomfort that you're talking about, what that came from, or where that came from, at least for me, was that I now felt a shift in responsibility. Like there was now more eyes on what I was doing and why I was doing it. And I just felt a little bit heavier. Like I couldn't just hide in my own little fishbowl of my private practice anymore. I was now a bit more visible. And so the decisions that I made or the way that I showed up online was now also more visible. So I felt a
mm,
little bit more responsibility over the things I did or what I said or what I claimed.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. So key themes so far, just to kind of circle back around to this conversation so far, it takes longer than expected to build a different income stream or a new income stream. It ain't passive, y'all. You will likely experience a lot of emotional resistance, like in Whitney's case. She had a lot of fear, a lot of doubt. We talked about that discomfort that comes from the visibility. There's also an identity shift that might occur depending on what your income stream is and how you choose to pursue that. And another thing that I kind of touched on is that you don't need to know everything up front. Anything else you wanted to add to our conversation so far before we segue?
I think the other thing that people really miss, and we've kind of touched on this, is how hard it is to get a following. And so I think people need to be very, you could have the best thing, but if you don't have the following, no one will know. And so really spending a lot of time understanding who those people are and nurturing them and providing for them before you're throwing things at them, I think is
Mhm.
very important.
And that's why I think when I'm working with a therapist who's in this place of discerning what their next steps might be outside of the therapy room, we spent a little bit of time first talking about low hanging fruit. And what I mean by that is that there are already people in your sphere of influence, people that you're serving or helping. There are already people coming to you. And I spoke about this on the previous podcast episode. There are people in your life who aren't clients, but people who are coming to you already asking questions about how to do this, or this seems so easy for you. Can you help me figure it out? Even if it's unrelated to your therapy practice, you have so many skill sets that people are already coming to you for. So if you have an idea for a different stream of income, maybe think about what are the things that I'm already doing. Maybe I'm already doing this for free and I didn't even
Yeah.
realize that this is something I could charge for or monetize. You know, if you're someone who loves to connect people together, there are paid networking opportunities and groups. Or if you have a particular treatment modality that you feel really good about and you're really confident in, or you already are a consultant, if that title is available in that modality, there are a lot of things that you can do that don't require a completely different skill set and may not even require building an audience from scratch. So there are just so many different ideas. It doesn't have to just look like consulting, which I know we've talked about so far because that's what you've done, Whitney, and that's also what I've done. But there are just so many other ways that you can build alternative streams. It could be like teaching and mentoring. It could be sort of the content creation that we've talked about. It could be key partnerships, writing a book. I mean, there are so many different things. So I do want to make sure that people who are hearing this episode understand that the world's your oyster. And I said that before, but I'm going to keep saying it. Okay, so what I want to do now is shift a little bit from just overall high level insight to maybe some real guidance for someone who's maybe listening and has an idea, that they're just like stuck in step one. Like, what do I do? I know I want to build this thing. I think it needs to exist. And so, what I would ask you, Whitney, is what would you tell a therapist who's just starting to think about building another income stream? What
Hmm.
matters most early on, you think?
Going back to what we said at the beginning is really honing in on what you're passionate about. What is your motivator? I would spend some significant time alone just thinking about that, journaling about that, praying about that, letting it sit within you and experience it. What that feels like in your body, what you're thinking about moving forward. Write your dreams down. Like they could be literal dreams, but I mean the dreams of what you want it to be. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would sit with people that love you and tell them about it. Get feedback on, does that sound like me? Is that something that you see passion surrounding? What are my motivators behind this? And get that support that you're looking for.
I love the words you used in that question to people. Instead of saying, does this sound like a good idea? Saying, does this sound like me?
Yeah.
That's such an important distinction because depending on who you ask, if you say, does this sound like a good idea? Like if you had asked your former consultant, does this sound like a good idea? You probably would have gotten, uh, no, that sounds like a weird idea, Whitney. I don't think you should do that. Right. Uh, but if you asked your husband, does this sound like me? Or if you asked your top 5 trusted confidants, does this sound like me? You would have gotten a much clearer answer that would have given you more clarity.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have got to have someone by your side, especially when you're talking about spouses, or your partners that believe in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And this gives them an opportunity to speak to that early on. Like my husband has got to sacrifice a lot for me to do wise practice,
Yeah.
but he believes in it and he sees how much I love it and the difference it makes. And so he can get behind that.
And even though you do, I agree, you have to have really strong support in your corner, it's also important to be able to discern who that support is and who it's not, because sometimes your spouse is not the most supportive person about this idea. Because if you're in maybe a financial position where you adding an additional income stream would create a bit more financial stress on your family, it's possible that your spouse may not be the person that you need to be going to for every, big decision. Of course, you would want to loop them in. I also think it's important to have someone who maybe doesn't have as much skin in the game to bounce ideas off of. And that could be a consultant, right? It could be someone that's maybe traversed this path before you and can give you a little bit of a roadmap, but isn't so financially dependent that
Uh-huh.
that they might steer you towards what would be considered a safer option, when really the better option, the one with the higher return on investment, might be the one that's a little bit more risky. And so I think just having a blend, like having, if you're married, having your partner bought in and having their support is so important. If it's difficult for them to be able to provide you that support, it's understandable. It just means that you also need to get some additional supports elsewhere from
Yeah.
people who know you, who love you, who know your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought up an important point, and this is what I was getting. My next thought is having a guide. And I see so many people, especially with passive streams or additional streams of income, we'll say, or I see it, especially with people starting a group practice. People start these things because they don't want to pay for consulting because it's expensive. And then they get down the road and they have made so many costly mistakes. And so I would say go get help. Of course, we want you to do it at Wise Practice because we bring in the faith and the spiritual component along with the business
Mm-hmm.
side of things and bring that clarity. But even if it's not us, get a guide to help you do the thing so that you're not spinning your wheels, wasting your time. We can get you from month one. We can get the thing that you're doing when you're with us, you might get it done in 6 months. It might take you a year if you did it by yourself. Spending all the research, the time, and just the accountability, you could get so much further along and not make all those mistakes.
It's the rabbit holes.
Yeah.
When you're doing it by yourself, you're just at every turn, every, wind gust, you're being
Yeah.
pulled somewhere else. So
Yeah.
having that focused support is so important. And I would say, one of my next questions for you, Whitney, was going to be, what do you think is the biggest mistake that people make early on? And you're speaking to it right now. I think it's that people tend to overcomplicate it in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
They have
Yeah.
this vision maybe for what they hope or dream this thing could look like, but they maybe believe that it has to look like that on day one. And that is maybe what leads them to make a lot of costly mistakes early on and to really overcomplicate it. So, what I was once told, and I continue to use this when I'm consulting with others, is that your goal is to create a simple business that you deeply understand.
Mm,
And that really stuck with me because it keeps me from, because I have a tendency too to overcomplicate things. Don't get me wrong. It does help me. It's an anchoring statement to
yeah.
remember that your job is to build a simple business that you deeply understand. So we don't need to overcomplicate it. We don't need to have 14 different offers and 7 tiers and here are all the different ways that people can find you. Start small, choose
Yep.
one thing, and the clarity that you get comes through the actions that you take. And expect there to be a lot of iterative processes here with whatever it is you do. Do you have
Hmm.
anything that you would want to add to that?
That was really great. Tell me the question again.
It was what is a mistake that people tend to make in the beginning? And my answer was I think people tend to overcomplicate it.
You said a lot of it. I don't know if this is really a mistake. It's more of a mindset, but people, they don't realize how many setbacks they're going to have, or I'm not doing a great job putting my words to this, but risks. You cannot be a successful entrepreneur without taking risks and without falling on your face. And you should anticipate it. So I think sometimes people start this process and I didn't sell what I wanted, or that didn't look the way I wanted. And, or that, first consulting client I had, that didn't go very well. And so then you think to yourself, I stink. I can't do this. I got to go backwards. And really, that's part of the growth. That's part of becoming who you need to become so that you can lead this business well, if that makes sense. Gosh, I was just running. This was the email that I just sent out, I think this week, when I was running my half marathon, and I was thinking about my business while I was running, which I'm normally doing, unfortunately, doing my business processing. And I was like, I made some mistakes. And I was thinking about my mistakes, but I was also thinking I'm in such a good place right now. And
Hmm.
I would never be where I am right now if I hadn't learned all those other things.
Absolutely. We learn through the doing, we learn through the mistakes. And Whitney, as you were just talking, I quickly did a Google search of
Uh,
the word entrepreneur. And I'm scrolling down the entire first page of Google. Okay. So I'm not just relying on the AI definition. I'm scrolling and I'm looking at Webster, Cambridge Dictionary, the Library of Economics and Liberty, and I'm reading just their meta tag at the top of what an entrepreneur is. Every single source has the word risk. So the actual literal definition of an entrepreneur is someone who takes a risk.
Totally.
So you can't have it both ways. You can't do this safely. You can't do this with guaranteed outcomes. And I
Yeah.
think I would even go so far, this might be a bit risky for me to say, but I would say that the reason we do this, the reason we identify and pursue a different income stream is not for the guaranteed outcome. It's for the opportunity to make a bigger impact. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm scrolling right now and it's like risk.
But the Bible is also full of risk.
Hmm.
You mentioned Moses earlier and the disciples following Jesus, sharing the gospel. It's a risk all the time.
Every single chapter of the Bible probably shows how someone took a risk and it
That's
didn't always go well, right?
that's right.
All right. So, what I'm hearing from you, just to kind of recap, it's important to start small, to maintain a mindset of I want to help, I want to have a lasting and expanded impact on my community, whether that's a local community or an online community. Clarity comes through action. Expect to fail at times. There will be roadblocks. That's kind of what makes this worth it, is going across that, and figuring it out.
Yeah.
Um, Something we didn't talk about that I also just want to highlight is, and maybe we did when we were talking about working alongside someone or having people in your corner. What I would say is don't build in isolation. Don't try to be that lone person in your basement trying to build something all by yourself and you're not bringing anyone into it or not telling anyone about it. Building in isolation to me is a recipe for burnout, but it's just hard to see the forest for the trees if we're not
Yeah.
having anyone in on our idea or helping us or supporting us, and we're just kind of building this thing off to the side. So don't build in isolation. Bring along people. I think that most people, therapists especially, they don't struggle with having ideas. They just struggle with clarity and support.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
It's that implementation.
Yes.
And I'm learning more and more as I grow as a consultant. The hands-on. They need the hands-on doing it with them.
Hmm.
And that's what we do.
That is. And that is exactly why we have created the Call to More Mastermind. Because so many therapists are sitting in this space of, okay, I know I'm meant to do something more. I just don't want to figure it out all alone. Yeah. So I think now would be a perfect time to talk a little bit more about that. So
Mhm.
I've touched base on it in my previous episode. I know you all have probably seen a commercial or two about it on the podcast, but really the Call to More Mastermind is a 6-month experience where we help you actually discern your direction and begin building something, not just talking about it high level. This is about implementation, like Whitney was just talking about. However, we're not going to let it take over your life or your practice. So, this is a small, high touch group designed for therapists who are ready to move from thinking about the thing and researching the thing to death and looking at other people who are already doing the thing. And it moves you through implementation to actually doing the thing. And not only that, but unlike the experience you had, Whitney, so many years ago, this will have the faith lens. So we're going to find out, what do you need so that this new idea of yours is aligned with your faith and builds upon it rather than competes with it.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you are letting me do this.
Oh, I'm excited about it. Just thinking through who's going to join and the ideas that they have and how it's going to impact the kingdom for greater.
Hmm.
That's a really exciting thing.
Yeah. Now, question for you, Whitney, not to put you on the spot or anything. Why do you think this experience, this mastermind called to more, can be so impactful to your community, to
Mhm.
faith-based therapists and practice owners?
Oftentimes, God puts something greater in our hearts, like He did with me. And we need a space to explore that, to understand it, to speak it into being, but also someone to guide us along the way. And it's like you said, it's specific to us because it's not just here's the business, get to it.
Hmm.
How is the Lord speaking right now? How do we sense that? How do we build something in line with that communicates more of who He is in the world through you?
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you.
And so I'll be your guide, your facilitator along this 6 month experience. And Whitney, I would love to have you maybe once or twice join us
Oh, I
and
love that.
and pray over us and give us some additional tools for how we can discern next steps. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So if you are listening to this episode and you're thinking, wow, this is exactly where I am. I have these ideas. I don't know where to start. Or I have this one idea that I've been thinking about for years. Because for many people who work with me, they didn't just come up with the idea a month ago. They've been pining over this one idea or these 5 ideas, and they had no idea, no traction, no direction. And so here we are 5 years later. And what I want to tell you is, if you're listening to this episode and you're one of those people, 5 years from now is going to come regardless. So you're going to be in one of two camps. You're either going to be 5 years later, still thinking about the thing, still praying about the thing, but not taking any action and going, oh, now it's been 10 years that I've had this idea and I haven't taken any meaningful action on it.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be 5 years in to this new idea and you will have learned so much along the way. And you're going to learn more than you ever could have by just sitting behind your screen doing the research.
Yep.
The learning comes in the doing. So you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to take the next step. And so if you're someone who's listened to this episode and you're like, okay, sign me up, I'm ready, you can head on over to wisepracticeconsulting.com/mastermind. And I'm sure we'll have a link in the show notes as well for you. We try to keep it frictionless.
That's right. Simple.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is they might have to take a risk.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
But you know what? You can impact so many people by taking that risk.
Mm.
Thank you so much for joining me, Whitney. I so appreciate this conversation and getting to know you just on a deeper level. I feel like I learned a little bit more about you and your journey, even more than I knew heading into this call. And so I just really appreciate you taking the time and being vulnerable with not just me, but all your listeners,
Oh,
the
well,
thousands of people who are tuning in every single week, and I think that's part of what makes you great, is that you're willing to step into that and be vulnerable and not just say like, oh yeah, here I am and I have all the answers and I never struggled once.
all the time. Thank you. I appreciate you and having this opportunity.
Yeah. All right. See you guys next time.